Some breaking news just coming in, going straight to that. Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani has resigned from the position of the Chief Minister, is what we are just picking up. There are some sketchy details as of now, but what we know is that he has in fact resigned from the post of the Chief Minister. We'll be going across to our reporters for more on that, the reasons really behind this resignation of Chief Minister Vijay Rupani as the Chief Minister of Gujarat. But in fact, this has come as a bit of a surprise there, but more information on that is awaited. What we really know at this point in time is that the Chief Minister of Gujarat has resigned from his position, and the reasons behind this is still not very, very clear. But this is a big story that we're getting at this start. The Gujarat Chief Minister resigning from his post. Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani has resigned from his position as the Chief Minister after being in power for 5 years. We'll get in more information on the reasons behind this resignation. For more on that, Himanshu is getting asked more on that. Himanshu, what is the reason really behind his resignation? What more can you tell us?
लगता है कि विजय रूपानी को इस्तीफा देना पड़ा है। सरकार बीजेपी लीडरशिप जो है वो खुश नहीं थी विजय रूपानी के कामकाज को लेकर, और सरकार और पार्टी के बीच में पिछले कुछ दिनों से अगर देखा जाए तो मतभेद चल रहा था विजय रूपानी को लेकर। ये पहले से था कि उनको इस्तीफा ले सकते हैं, पार्टी नेतृत्व नाराज है, लेकिन कुछ कारणों से ये फैसला लगातार चलता रहा। लेकिन अब गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री विजय रूपानी को इस्तीफा देना पड़ा है, क्योंकि उनकी डिप्टी सीएम नितिन पटेल से भी जो है वो नहीं बनती थी। आपसे याद कीजिए, जब सरकार बनी थी उसके बाद उनको जब वित्त मंत्री नहीं बनाया गया और रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट करना पड़ा था अमित शाह को, जो उस वक्त अध्यक्ष थे। लेकिन लगातार विजय रूपानी को लेकर वहां के संगठन और कई बड़े मंत्री नाराज थे। लेकिन क्योंकि पूरा मामला जो है वो गुजरात से था और गुजरात से प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी और गृह मंत्री अमित शाह दोनों आते हैं, इसीलिए इस फैसले को थोड़ा लंबा समय के लिए टाला गया था। लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि अब सही समय था, क्योंकि 2022 के अंत में ये चुनाव होने हैं विधानसभा के, और चुनाव से जाने से पहले नया मुख्यमंत्री जो है वो गुजरात को मिलने वाला है। तो ये देखा जा सकता है कि गुजरात में क्या अब पटेल मुख्यमंत्री मिलते हैं, क्योंकि याद कीजिए 2016 के अंदर किस तरीके से जो है हार्दिक पटेल के नेतृत्व में जो है वहां पर प्रदर्शन हुए थे, और उसके बाद आनंदीबेन को हटाया गया था और विजय रूपानी को जो है वहां मुख्यमंत्री बनाया गया था। लेकिन विजय रूपानी के कामकाज से जो है केंद्रीय नेतृत्व संतुष्ट नहीं था, और इसीलिए शायद उनसे इस्तीफा देने के लिए कहा गया था पार्टी नेतृत्व की तरफ से। अब ये माना जा सकता है कि अगले 102 दिन के अंदर जो है नए ऑब्जर्वर्स वहां जाएंगे और नए मुख्यमंत्री का चुनाव करेंगे।
जी, बने रहिए हमारे साथ। राहुल श्रीवास्तव, नेशनल ब्यूरो हेड, इज आल्सो विद अस फॉर मोर ऑन दैट। Rahul, what's really brewing in the BJP in Gujarat, within the BJP? And also the next question is, who is going to be the next Chief Minister of Gujarat?
So, basically, it's a very clear exercise by the BJP, which can be termed as damage control. Damage control primarily because during the COVID period, in terms of handling of the crisis, if you recall, in the first phase, the large-scale migration, the shortages at hospitals, and generally the average handling of the pandemic, the Rupani government under Mr. Vijay Rupani was found to be terribly wanting. Before that also, one thing was very clear, that the kind of leadership that the BJP top expects from Mr. Rupani, he was failing to deliver. And so much so that last elections, if you notice, it was primarily Narendra Modi's image that the BJP rode on, and eventually, despite a large-scale resentment against sitting MLAs, it was the Narendra Modi factor which helped the BJP pip the Congress, beat the Congress. Of course, yes, the Congress was in disarray despite Rahul Gandhi hopping from one temple to other. In fact, he had visited nearly 38 temples and religious places. The fact remains that Rupani was failing to inspire the cadres, and it is virtually an exercise the BJP carried out in Uttarakhand, that it changed Chief Minister not once but twice to ensure that the right equations are created and political signals are sent prior to elections in Gujarat next year. Now, what we are being told that the exercise will be addressing the aspirations of the dominant Patels could well be addressing the aspirations of the dominant Patel community in Gujarat. But the BJP has displayed over the last few years a tendency that it tries to break the caste mold to get the perfect equation, send across signals to the various caste groups in various states. And that is why, as Himanshu was saying, observers will be sent largely to gauge the pulse and also to send the signal to the MLAs that whatever the party decides, that the High Command decides, should be acceptable. But when it comes to choosing who will be the right man, there are only two people. One is Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, and Amit Shah, the Home Minister.
It's interesting you say that, Rahul. In the context of what you just said, I want to ask you about the kind of statement that was made just a few days ago by the BJP president of the state, C.R. Patil, who had said that 2022 assembly elections would be under the Chief Minister Vijay Rupani and under his leadership, and he really would be the face of the party even then.
Yes, see, these kind of statements are made generally before a move because there are murmurs, and it is just to ensure that there is no large-scale runaway ambition or clashes between those who could be the aspirants. That statements are made to balance out these aspirations. But eventually, everybody in Gujarat knew virtually over the last few months that Vijay Rupani, the clock was ticking. And once the government, the central BJP, got a clear signal that as far as COVID is concerned, things are largely under control, because they didn't want to change the horses midstream when the pandemic was raging. So he was lucky that first there was a first wave in which it didn't do very well, and then the second wave in which the government, the BJP couldn't have changed the Chief Minister given the magnitude of the crisis. Now that the BJP has a breather in terms that as far as the COVID front in Gujarat is concerned, it is largely under control, and that is why the BJP has made its move. And one will have to wait and see that, like in Gujarat, like in Uttarakhand, is the exercise going to be as bloodless? Otherwise, what one can say is that one of the most trusted men for the BJP's top brass, that is Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is C.R. Patil himself. C.R. Patil, who has a track record in Gujarat in terms of managing his constituency. He has also been a favorite of the Prime Minister in terms that for a very long time, Varanasi, Prime Minister's own constituency, was being managed by Mr. C.R. Patil. So one can say that Mr. Patil could well be one of the front runners.
It's interesting that he made that statement, Rahul, isn't it? Just a few days ago. But such as politics. Be with us, Rahul. We'll just go across to Paulami Saha also. Tracks the Bharatiya Janata Party for us. Paulami, is this move really surprising? What has been brewing? Really, just get us the inside track.
Well, it was something which was sort of doing the rounds of the political circles, specifically, of course, with the Bharatiya Janata Party, that Mr. Rupani, even before the elections are held in Gujarat at the end of 2022, could possibly be on his way out as part of an expansion plan. All sorts of conjectures have been made, whether it is about the performance of the Gujarat government under the leadership of Mr. Vijay Rupani, or, there are some internal rumblings within the state unit of the Bharatiya Janata Party. But this is not entirely a surprising move. We do know what we're hearing from some of our sources right now in the Bharatiya Janata Party is that Organizational General Secretary of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Mr. B.L. Santosh, is currently in a meeting at the party office in Ahmedabad, and they could possibly be deciding already on the successor to Mr. Vijay Rupani. It could be anyone, including, of course, Deputy Chief Minister of the state, Nitin Patel, who was in the running for Chief Minister the last time round when, of course, the Bharatiya Janata Party came to power in Gujarat, and Mr. Vijay Rupani was in fact elected. Nitin Patel was in the running at that point of time, and many believe that Mr. Patel himself was very confident at that time that he would be in fact chosen by the party to lead the government in Gujarat. But then he was trumped by Mr. Vijay Rupani. He could be in the running. C.R. Patil, as Rahul was mentioning earlier as well, someone who is extremely close to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Home Minister, who has been, of course, he is, of course, a member of parliament from the state of Gujarat. Handled some key projects for the party, and specifically those in relation to, of course, the Prime Minister, especially, of course, this city of Varanasi, which is the Prime Minister's constituency in terms of building it. Mr. C.R. Patil is considered to be extremely close to the top leadership of the Bharatiya Janata Party. He, of course, is currently the president of the Gujarat Bharatiya Janata Party. He could also be one of those names that could be possibly now in the race to, of course, be elected chief minister. Of course, C.R. Patil is one of those MPs who's had an excellent track record from his Lok Sabha constituency of Surat, from where he wins with possibly the highest margin every time he wins across the country. His margin of win is always the highest. He has great, sort of reputation in his constituency of Surat. Again, someone trusted by the top leadership of the Bharatiya Janata Party. So it remains to be seen who, of course, replaces Mr. Vijay Rupani, but it is a decision which is being, of course, discussed as we speak right now.
That's right. Rahul, and you mentioned this earlier that things were not okay when it came to Vijay Rupani's performance in the state, and it was clear that the leadership in Delhi was not too happy. Given the fact that the BJP is also facing anti-incumbency for about 2 decades or so in the state of Gujarat, this perhaps was required, perception management, an attempt to show that the BJP is working at getting its house in order also?
Yes, Sneha, that's a very correct point. Right now you see that the chief minister is going to get changed, but what top sources of the party are telling us, that it's not going to be an exercise restricted only to the change in chief minister. If on the ground there is a perception that the BJP has been in power for too long, there is a bit of complacence among party cadres and the sitting MLAs, definitely what we are told that this time around everybody should be prepared for large-scale changes as far as the sitting MLAs are concerned. Because if there has been MLAs who have already been judged, what we are told that proper dossiers on the kind of perception in the public will be very soon ready. And when ticket distribution starts in the BJP, then there will be some different chopping as far as sitting MLAs are concerned. That will be a very clear attempt to turn the anti-incumbency against the BJP into the exercise that by changing the very MLAs who are sitting in those posts. And in fact, if you recall, the last elections also, the BJP had done something similar. What is very interesting last time in the last election was that it was one thing was sensed that in Saurashtra and several other regions where the BJP didn't do very well, the fact remains that the Narendra Modi factor was critical. That the people who were unhappy with the BJP's performance in Gujarat were not ready to vote as far as against the BJP or Narendra Modi specifically is concerned. So will that advantage continue this time around also, despite the BJP being in power for so long in Gujarat and now in Delhi for more than 7 years? Will the Narendra Modi factor prevail, that people will still say that we vote for Narendra Modi, not for the party or not for the candidate? And that could well be the testing point, because remember, as most of the surveys are showing, that all across the country, the ratings of the Prime Minister, given the magnitude and the ferocity of the pandemic, the rating has gone down. And that is why Gujarat is going to be a very critical test. The BJP would love to give anything to win that test, primarily because, again, that is the biggest prestige battle. Though politically the most critical battle may be UP. But in next year, the real prestige battle will be Gujarat. If the BJP retains it, it will be a strong signal that BJP and Narendra Modi are still very popular. But if the main rival, Congress, can stage a surprise there by even if reducing the BJP's numbers sizably, then it will be a very different political signal for the Congress, because the Congress is in a direct battle in that state, unlike Bengal and others in Gujarat.
Rahul, be with us. Paulami, like Rahul has been saying that this obviously is to handle a lot of things, including manage perception and also beat the anti-incumbency of just so many years altogether. But on the other hand, will this also not give the opposition an opportunity to say that, look, they don't even have faith on their own elected leaders, isn't it?
Absolutely. This does give the opposition an opportunity to tell the people of Gujarat before, of course, the state goes into elections at the end of 2022, that this is the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is not confident about its own leadership, which is not confident that its chief minister has, in fact, performed well enough to, in fact, lead them to victory again in 2022. Definitely gives a handle to the Congress party, which is the primary opposition party. And then, of course, to mix things up in Gujarat politics, the Aam Aadmi Party is making an entry in Gujarat as well. So the competition for the Bharatiya Janata Party, which has been in power for so long, if you just look at the former Chief Minister of Gujarat and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's tenure, it's started in 2001, towards the end of 2001, when he took over from Keshubhai Patel, and then, of course, when he demitted office in 2014 to come to Delhi. It's that long a period of power that the Bharatiya Janata Party has been in Gujarat. They are facing some amount of anti-incumbency. There is, a perception that the centre, the state could have handled, in fact, the pandemic much, much better. There were reports of Gujarat not having handled the pandemic as well as it should have. So all of this was reflecting on the performance of the government, and specifically the Chief Minister Vijay Rupani. So like I said earlier, Sneha, this is not something which comes as a total surprise. Of course, it coming in this fashion today when, the Chief Minister announced his resignation, obviously has come suddenly, but the fact that this was expected and this was being talked about in Bharatiya Janata Party circles for a while, that this change could in fact happen even before the state goes into elections, and that the Bharatiya Janata Party is unlikely to go into the Gujarat elections of December 2022 under the leadership of Vijay Rupani. This was definitely something which is happening on expected lines. This is something that we had anticipated, and clearly a big boost for the Congress's campaign. Now it remains to be seen how they possibly capitalize on this in terms of perception, like you said, telling the people of Gujarat that the BJP doesn't even feel confident about its own leadership and the Chief Minister's performance to be able to fight under his leadership. They have to change the Chief Minister just a year before the state goes to polls.
But, Paulami, and I think you would agree with me, this is amazing, the manner in which the BJP does this sort of a big shake-up with just so much ease. They've done it in Karnataka, they've done it in Uttarakhand just a couple of times, and now they're doing it in Gujarat also, isn't it? It would have been completely different for any other party, like a Congress, for example, isn't it?
Well, Sneha, at the end of the day, winning elections and, keeping its base of power is absolutely important. The BJP, as we know, is an election machine of sorts. It thinks elections. It thinks about, of course, retaining power. It has, of course, faced challenges. It's not been an easy task for the BJP to expand across the country, its footprint across the country. It has faced stiff challenges at the time when you thought that, the Modi wave had established itself also in the country. It lost Madhya Pradesh to the previous Congress regime. Then, of course, they toppled the Kamal Nath government and Shivraj Singh Chauhan took over. Then, of course, there was Rajasthan, Karnataka. It was first the Congress HDS government, JDS government, I beg your pardon, HD Kumaraswamy's government, which came to power. Then, of course, the BJP, shook up the numbers in Karnataka, and B.S. Yediyurappa initially was able to take charge of the state, and then, of course, now demitting office for Chief Minister Bommai. But the fact is that it has not been an easy task, and the BJP did realize it's probably been doing its number crunching for a while, as is the case with the Bharatiya Janata Party. It does its calculations well ahead of other parties. It's probably been, going down to the ground, surveying the people and their feedback, and understanding that the perception as far as the government's...
Paul, may be with us.